A few days ago I noticed a serious problem with my bike. The bar end weights are starting to rust. This is where I've rubbed the paint off with my hands leaning against the handlebars. So, today's job is to build some new bar end weights. After all, how hard can it be? It's a pretty easy job to remove them, just these two screws to get the bark busters off. Once the screw on the handlebar is loosened off, the whole thing just slides out. So over on the bench it's just an easy job to take the bolt out and the bar end comes out with it. But bark busters come with the bar end and then a little spacer, and I also had to put a few washers in between to space it out correctly for my handlebars. So that's a bit of a pain. So these are the two bar end weights. The one on the throttle side is a little bit longer and it only needs one washer. But I think I'll just build one complete unit rather than having separate spaces and stuff. So it's down to the shed, and it's always nice to start with a clean slate. Well, in this case, some clean brown paper on my workbench area. Tiny little workbench area that it is. But it does the job. And everyone knows, clean workbench, clean mind. So the first job is to measure the old ones. And because I've got a nice clean piece of brown paper on my bench, I can use that to write down the measurements. So the outside diameter is 35. And the length of the bar end weight itself looks like to be about 22, close enough. And then the total length of the clutch side is going to be about 29.5. And the diameter of the clutch side, the indent bit, is 21.5. The indent bit on the throttle side is a bit smaller because it has to cope with the throttle slide as well. Lastly, I need a drill that will drill the hole the same size, and the easiest way is to just give it a test. And it turns out it's an 8mm. I'm going to build the new ones out of aluminium. They won't rust. And I've got this length here that once I cut it off, that'll be enough for both bar end weights. And your normal garden variety drop saw cuts aluminium just nicely with its tungsten blade. So now it's over to my little hobby lathe to make those bar end weights as per the dimensions I've written down on my brown paper. First step is to dress the end so it's nice and straight. Next step is to bring the whole thing down to the outside dimension. And I find that it's 39 at the moment. I want to bring it down to 35. So I'll just measure the total length of the first bar end weight and just do it apart a little bit just so I've got a guide. Now I can take the whole length down to 35mm. This requires 2 passes on my little lathe 2mm diameter each time. Please note that I'm just a backyard tinkerer and this is just for fun. So don't bother, correcting me where I'm wrong. I'll eventually work it out. And now for a bit of sped up action for the second pass. Final check. And yep, good enough for me. Just using a bit of blue pen to mark up the aluminium so that I can get the 7.5mm I need for the clutch side. And just a very light touch gives me a mark that I can cut to. Aluminium doesn't chip very well, it tends to go into strings, thus the mess on the floor. You can put me into the weird bucket, but I find it quite therapeutic to watch the lathe peel off the material and leave a nice shiny surface behind. Yep, 21.5, close enough. Now it's time to drill the 8mm hole before I part the whole thing off. Do you find it weird to see the drill bit stationary as it cuts, or is it just me? Before I part off, I'll give it a good old polish to make it look nice and pretty. So a couple of grits of emery paper. And then finish off with a bit of metal polish, which will also help to stop the aluminium oxidising. And with that, a little bit of 000 steel wool to make it nice and smooth and shiny. I've chamfered the outside edge and now it's time to finish parting off. Parting off always leaves a bit of a dag on the bit that's actually parted, so I'll put that back in the lathe once I've done both of them. And now I can just clean up the face so that it's nice and shiny and smooth, and get rid of that dag as well. And Bob's your uncle. Yes, I know what you're thinking. I'm using aluminium instead of steel, and so these bar end weights are going to be lighter. Well, I'm not too worried about that. I think it'll be fine. Besides, that huge weight saving will make me go faster, won't it? Anyway, there's the finished product. What a thing of beauty. Old ones. New ones. Happy with that? So now there's nothing left to do but to just reassemble them. which again is a really easy task. The end bolt is tapered and it goes in and opens up those fingers and clamps on the inside of the bar. Simple but effective. I've just noticed that the screw that holds the plastic handguard on, that's also rusty. I need to buy some nice stainless ones for that. That'll be another job for another day. A final tighten and the job's done. Well, that was a very satisfying but easy little project. And they look $100. And as a bonus, the throttle still works. Nothing more satisfying than starting with an inanimate lump and ending up with a thing of beauty.